What's going on, everybody? Chizuru is out, and let's go ahead and take a look at all of her stuff. So first up with her cards, we're not going to go in depth like I usually do with all of the epiphanies, but we'll just take a brief look at them and then kind of just pick out the ones that I would personally go for. So off of Karmic Flames, she has a lot of options, honestly, so you can go with anything. Personally, I really like the... Where is it? Is that a generic? Holy shit, that's crazy. Wait, no shot, right? 1 second. Let me take a look at these. Okay, no, it's not. Okay, I was just misreading it. The one on the far right is the one that I like the most. This one exhausts itself, and when a target inflicted with Cursed Shackles is defeated, you create this card. So essentially, it'll get it out of your deck, but it won't get it out of your deck permanently, so it'll at least come back whenever you need it, whenever you need to cycle to a new enemy. So that one is very good just to help thin out your deck and make your runs a little more consistent. But otherwise, you like the multiple hit. So just the base effect is pretty solid, or getting the reduction in cost of a card. Damage is whatever, and the created card that she can make is a little expensive for my liking at 2 costs there. And we got Tsukiyomi, we got 2 Will-O-Wisp for each hit of the next attack card of this unit used. I'm always a big fan of the upgrades here. So this one has lead, you can potentially make it free, unique, makes your save runs a little easier, or your save farms. But when an attack card is used, 2 Will-O-Wisp, not the best effect out of all of her stuff, but it at least gets it again out of the deck. You get to thin it out, and you get to find all of her cards that are actually really good. Otherwise, every option honestly is good in their own right, which is either to generate more cards, or at least more consistently generate cards, or to add on more hits onto her cards in general. But again, I always like the upgrades because they are just universally really good at thinning out your deck. Now, Bounded Dusk, this is the upgrade she's going to start with every at the start of every fight, and it'll give her inhibit. So this is the effect where she can't gain AP, but very important because it gives the extra hit to her generated cards. And at base, it'll decrease the cost of 1 random card until 1 random card of other commands. It's worded so weirdly that I still don't really understand it, but it decreases the cost of a card in your hand, I think, of your allies and not necessarily herself. And then some condition gets rid of that. I'm still not entirely sure on what that is. But for this one, conceptually, I like 2 of these, and that is the center 2, which is activate 2 random cards of other combatants at the start of every turn. The bad thing about this is that you can't sequence things how you would like to, so it can kind of fiddle and mess with things, but it does give you essentially some free AP, which she's going to need or want off of getting that inhibit. And then when Shadow of the Moon Plus is used, decrease cost of the next 1 card used by 1. This is good if you can generate multiple copies of this card, so that way you can sequence them repeatedly one after another. But otherwise, again, a lot of these other ones are good. The 2 random leads I think is not good because it's too specific. Obviously that's meant to be used specifically with Ray, which can be good, but you're not always going to consistently draw 2 lead cards at the start of every turn. And then decreasing the cost of 1 until 2 cards are used. If I'm reading the weird translation right, that would be decreasing 2 costs, or 2 cards, 2 0 costs, which would be pretty solid. But I haven't gotten that one personally, so if that's not how that works, then yeah, I'm still going to suggest one of these center 2. I honestly like the base effect still too. And then her bread and butter Oni Hunt here. Haste, hits 3 times, not the biggest hits, unfortunately. It is similar to Yuki in how she does multiple hits, but they're not exactly the highest multipliers. But it does end up kind of working itself out with how she generates cards, so not too bad, as well as buffing her next bind card. And this one is 100% going to be the 4-hitter. It reduces the damage even more, but you get that additional hit. It gives you an even bigger buff on your bind cards. So you're more consistently going to be able to stack up all those bind cards, and 4 hits means that any other buffs that she's going to add on to herself is going to be even better. Everything else is pretty much a negative. The only exception I will say is, again, the upgrade, because it gets it out of your deck, but only in the caveat that you can dupe it before it gets epiphanied, so that way you can run both the upgrade version and the 4-hit version. And that's really the only case where I would pick the upgrade over anything else, because otherwise this is a very important bread and butter card for her. And I haven't really mentioned it before, but this is the card you would want to dupe the most, so you want to dupe as many copies as you can of this card. It's going to be a lot of damage, and it's going to be a lot of stack generation for her. And then as far as removals go, again, like Yuki, and I like how they're doing this, and I hope they continue to make the basics at least somewhat valuable. The only thing you'd really consistently remove every time is going to be the shield, of course, but then the basics you can actually keep because it does help generate stacks. They're okay attacking cards, but if you end up having a space in your deck and you have enough copies of like Oni Hunt, then you can end up removing the Moon Slashes because they're just going to end up being worse versions of Oni Hunt. Now, partners for Chizuru are kind of tough. None of these are just the way that most psionic partners work currently, just don't really work very well with her. Like Eloise is one that I have built that I always use, which is when you first exhaust a card, she's not really going to do that. So immediately she's just kind of completely off of the list. Antea is fine. She does generate a card, and she's most likely always going to generate a card every turn. So you will get all of her conditionals up. So she's okay. Bria is also okay because again, you're going to be able to get the conditional off of generating a card, and you're going to have a nice stacking buff on 30% when you've stacked it up to 3 times. It's not always going to be the easiest to stack it up 3 times. But Bria's okay. Unfortunately, the second part of her conditional is, again, never going to be active. She doesn't generate status ailments. Unfortunately, those are considered attacks, not status ailments turned into attacks, which would then actually make this work. And then, of course, her signature, again, I feel like they tried to make it a little more enticing because this actually has 3 lines of buffs that you can get, technically. But yeah, they went with the baseline of attack rather than doing damage boosting on some conditional, which is cool because of the consideration that most 3 stars are going to be better than a lot of your 4 and 5 stars. But unless you're getting this max duped, unfortunately, they kept it at the same numbers, so it's still just going to be 8%. Whereas on a 3-star maxed out, you're going to have that 16% boost. And then the effect is whenever you stack cards, so not just when you generate, you already have to have one in hand and then stack onto that. You can do that 3 times for a cap of 15% damage bonus. And then this extra effect, which I think is neat to have added on, but it's like so shitty that I don't think it's really that worth it. I think the idea is that it would add another hit, so that way you would get another stack of Will-O-Wisp whenever this procs, but every time you use an attack card that deals 3 hits, you do that fixed damage. The damage is completely garbage, but if the fixed damage actually gives you a stack of Will-O-Wisp, I get where they were going with it. But unfortunately, with only the 8% attack boost and this capping out at 15% amp, I would say that still potentially Bria is a consideration if you can get this stacked up every turn because that is 30% damage. Now an 8% boost is probably going to be somewhere between 10 to 15%, and then added on with this is going to make that at least like 30%. So if you end up getting this sig, this is completely fine. But otherwise, genuinely, I think that for most players, because you're already going to be able to max it out, just going for the generic 3-star maxed out is going to be best. The other conditionals aren't going to apply to every attack. You're going to have to meet some conditional like generating a card or stacking a card. And then the buffs generally aren't going to be that high. But once they are all live, then these end up, I think, passing Zetera maxed out. Yeah, otherwise make your life easy, and I would just go with Zetera every time. And you can see I have pretty much almost everything important maxed out except for the crit stuff. We're still working on that slowly, but we do have maxed uniques. This one is very good. It's what makes the basic attack not just a standard basic attack, so it actually makes Moonslash valuable. Buff to Moonslash neat, and then buff to her bind cards there. Very good. Definitely want all of those. And for memory fragments, I won't go over all the stats. I think people already know what you're probably going to go for generically on everybody. She's going to love crit damage. And I think that Conqueror's Aspect is going to probably be her best. You can always run the 2-2-2 split instead. That's always fine too. And then the new set I think is fine as well. This is another one of those like partner things that I was mentioning before where you have to like hit these conditions before you're actually going to get the maximum benefit out of it. So you can get a cap of 20% extra damage to all of your void cards, which is good because she's going to have all these multi-hitting cards. So this is going to stack up and be very good. But then if you are going to be consistently critting anyway, again, I think Conqueror's Aspect is still going to beat this out, considering the fact that pretty much, I think all of her cards, unless you change, I think even if you change them, they're still going to be 1 cost. So Conqueror's Aspect still pretty much just hits everything in her deck. And then here are just some examples of some save data. Not the luckiest in my gear, but you can see here I kept both of my basic attacks. And is this the one where, yeah, I got pretty unlucky, but also lucky. I was able to get the 2 versions of Oni Hunt and get 2 copies. Unfortunately, I didn't get a 3rd copy. The 3rd copy would have made this go to the moon. but only 2 copies of the hitting 4 times one. But then Karmic Flames and Bound at Dusk didn't hit their epiphanies. I still think they're fine cards without the epiphanies, but yeah, those would have been nice to have gotten some epiphanies there. And then other ones you can see, I didn't get like dupes, and I didn't even get the option for the 4-hitter. So I ended up having a bunch of space, so I ended up removing a Moonslash. This deck is pretty awful, but it's the only one that has the OP curse card, so I was like, you know what, it's fine. And it's got the 2 God Epiphanies, so we have free Karmic Flames, and then the Bound to Dust, which gives morale, which again for multi-hitting cards is going to be really big. And then the last one, Farmed Up, which is a good point to bring up, that if you end up being able to fit generics in, I wouldn't necessarily recommend them, but like attack is always fine if you got it in Epiphany. Otherwise, I don't think it's that good. So this one didn't hit an Epiphany, so it's pretty worthless there. But yeah, again, you can see 2 copies of the Oni Hunt. So this one is like fine. At least it has the epiphanies on everything, and it has the exhaust version of Karmic Flames, which I think is really good. So this one is definitely a consideration for me, but I think I'll be sticking with this one because I do have the upgrade, the 2 copies. Ideally, I think though you're gonna want like just to shoot for like the 4 copies of Oni Hunt, and then hitting a God Epiphany somewhere. What would be pretty nice is getting morale on this, because again, morale is just going to make these go to the moon, giving you an additional, on 4 hits, 80% damage. And then for the whales out there, or people who really love Chizuru, she's one of the characters that I would say is really buffed by her dupes. Even just her first dupe is really solid, giving her potentially an additional, what is that, like 60% damage on the upgraded generated card that she makes. So first dupe is really good. Second dupe is also pretty solid. Whenever you play the upgraded version of her generated card, you create another one, so it's just more consistently able to get you back into getting more of the upgraded version of the card played out. So that boosts a lot of her consistency. And I'm going to skip over 4, which is still, of course, really good, insanely good. But I want to skip over it because if you're going to 4, I feel like you might as well go to 6 if you're on that whale territory, because this one gives you 30% damage buff to all of her attack cards, which for anything that's hitting 3 to 4 times, that's an additional 90 to 120% damage. But then also, when you max those stacks from the 4th dupe, on the 6th dupe, your upgraded generated card will get another hit, which is really crazy. So her dupes go to the moon and make her a lot better. And then really quick, I think a lot of people, I feel like I should just go over this. I'll probably go over it again whenever I end up like doing a should you pull video for her. But for any future characters, you need to understand that characters like Mei Lin, with like her 1-turn kill build and how consistently easy it is to like pull that off, or Tressa heal build, these are like a couple builds that are just absolutely broken in the game, and in any other gacha, these would be nerfed to the ground. But they're going to hopefully stay existing in this game, and because they exist, I think it's unfair to really compare any character to these 2, because they just entirely kind of break the balance of the game, and they're really incomparable when you get these builds going. So to compare these characters to any other future upcoming characters, I think is really unfair. Now for Chizuru's teammates, I'm gonna have to play around with her more. Obviously, it's just day 1, so it's gonna be hard to say like this is the perfect team or these are the perfect setups. I'm sure somebody's going to find something pretty cracked for Chizuru, but just off starting, I think that she's going to pair really well with Cassius. Cassius not only giving you draw cards, but being able to do 1/1 because she has a lot of those 1 costs. Means you're going to be able to fit in those additional hits for her. And then Rei, I think, is an absolute no-brainer. She's going to buff a lot of cards, and especially something like, this is one of the rare cases where finally I think Dark Condensation is like one of the best buffing cards that you can get off of her. Getting on base at least 100% damage onto pretty much any of her cards is going to go to the moon. On the 4-hit Oni hunts, those are going to be 400% extra damage. And then on her upgraded cards, you know, at least 300% extra damage. So yeah, a lot there. And then just in general, all of her buffs are going to, again, help skyrocket Chizuru's potential by a lot. And then I think Nia's fine. And then honestly, their suggestions seem pretty interesting. And I think those will be probably pretty solid with the way her Will-O-Wisp works when you are to use somebody like Luke or use somebody like Tressa. Unfortunately, their primary builds, I would say, are a little AP hungry, at least mostly Luke's is, Tresses is going to be harder to pull off because of how Inhibit works and how you can't gain extra AP. And then maybe Veronica as well. Unfortunately, not that it would contribute a lot, but her ballistas do not work for Will-O-Wisp, so it's not too great there, but all the drop power that Veronica provides is also going to be pretty valuable. So all in all, that's how I would build and pair up Chizuru currently. Now, I do think that her numbers are a little lower than I would like, and I think that she is a little too AP hungry because of how Inhibit works, so she doesn't work with Mika. And a lot of other characters can really take advantage of a lot of drawing and a lot of AP generation, whereas she can't really take advantage of any of that. So I do think that she might be capped a little bit when it comes to a lot of team comps, a lot of situations, and just how her kit works in general. And potentially losing out on that Inhibit might actually end up making her better. Losing out on that extra hit for her additional cards and just going into Oni Hunt and generating the cards. It unfortunately makes them a lot weaker, but just an idea that Inhibit might actually, as it states by its own name, inhibit her potential maybe just a bit too much with how a lot of other DPSs work and how they all kind of benefit. Yes, that's about it so far. Hopefully I'll have a lot more collected thoughts on her, when we've actually had a lot more time to play with her. But for now, I think she's all right. And yeah, hopefully this was helpful for you. Thank you everybody for watching. Take care as always. I'll catch you in the next one.